Welcome, everybody, to the Zorich podcast. I am Chris Zorich, and on today's show, this is going to be a fun one. We have Notre Dame star, national champion, and veteran NFLer, Pat Eilers, and also my big brother, but we'll get into that during the interview. We got this awesome video of Pat making a move, so hold on one second. How awesome was that, man? This is big time here, man. This is big time.
Z, how are you? Good to be with you.
Awesome. Well, folks, this is kind of exciting for me because I've been fortunate enough to know Pat literally more than half of my life, which is awesome. So we have a whole bunch of stuff to unpack here, but one of the most exciting things recently, obviously, we had a chance to see each other briefly for a couple minutes on Saturday in South Bend. I was actually on my way back to Chicago right before the game. However, you had a chance to actually be at the game. Can you tell our audience, how freaking exciting that was? Can you just kind of tell us about, double overtime. It was incredible.
It was incredible. You think about it, Z, it reminded me back in, and I don't want to create any jinxes. I'm a little superstitious about this, but when's the last time number 4 beat number 1?
Exactly.
In South Bend.
I actually have I have a cheap little promo here. This is when we won the national championship. My water glass here.
Yeah, I think that was 1988. We know how.
Yes, sir, it was.
So it was a great, it was great for us. I think obviously it was probably I don't know if Brian Kelly, I don't know the answer to this. Has he ever beat a number 1 team in South Bend? I don't think so.
This was the biggest game by far.
Biggest game. And then when you think about it too, another fellow Chicagoan, Tommy Rees, kind of getting the OC. And I don't know if there's a bigger challenge for any offensive coordinator than going against Brent Venables, who I think is arguably, he's certainly one of the best, if not the best D coordinators.
Absolutely.
In collegiate football, but maybe professionally as well. And I don't, I think, so Tommy held up great. Ian Book, I think he had 5 or 6 guys coming after him every play.
Yeah. And
phenomenal. It was awesome.
So, the first overtime, second overtime, were you guys just kind of sitting on pins and needles? I was in the garage. I was in my garage watching with a couple of my guys, with actually Pat Terrell and Tim Ryan.
How were you?
Yeah, we were sitting there hanging out in the garage watching it, and I'm sitting there biting. I have no more nails left because it was crazy.
It was crazy, and the thing I didn't see, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. I actually, I'll tell you in a second, but that PI, that pass interference flag that was picked up. What was that all about? Because I think that's when I thought maybe our luck had run out.
Right.
And I had no idea why I don't understand why they picked it up. Can you?
I don't remember that part. I'm sorry. I was in the garage kind of having a couple of cocktails. So I don't remember that part.
So I'm walking. So we're leaving the stadium and going down the elevator, and Tony Dungy, who does, commentary for the game now.
Right.
He was a coach when I was with the Minnesota Vikings. So
okay.
I've known Tony for a long, long time. And I said, after we got done catching up for a quick minute, I said, what about the pass interference call flag that was thrown that would have given us 1st and 10 that they picked up? And Tony said, Pat, I don't know. I can't tell you. And that's one of the most even-handed, objective people in America.
Sure, absolutely. So you were going down in the elevator. You guys were going down to rush the field, right? Or not? No?
I did not rush the field. I wasn't. I can't be accused for spread, but I would tell you. I thought, in retrospect, obviously you don't want anybody to get ill and potentially have any dire circumstances. But in 2020 is, the tough times it has been.
Sure.
Just the spontaneity and of the crowd at that moment in time, it was just phenomenal. I don't look poorly on it. I think it was, innocent, and listen, it hasn't happened. I guess in '93 we beat Florida State when they were number one.
Right.
But, in terms of this, I think Miami, when they came in, we played them, hadn't lost in a couple years of regular season play.
Correct.
And it was the same for Clemson. So I thought it was just phenomenal for Notre Dame, for the student body, right? And just the times that they've been through what looked like an empty stadium. All of a sudden didn't look so empty when everybody was on the field.
That's awesome. It's funny because I was reading an article the next day. They were talking, I think it was in USA Today. They were talking about kind of what happened, and they were talking to Jack Swarbrick, the athletic director. Right. And he was actually there, I think he was a student, I want to say in 77, I'm not sure. But he had talked about how he had stormed the field as a student for one of the games. And then the last question the reporter asked him was, would you have rushed the field if you were a student? He was like, yep. So, you got the AD saying it, which, again, as you talked about, you have this emotion. They've been kind of restrained the whole season. They've been, after the games, even when they do the alma mater, they're like, 20 feet apart anyway, so you have all these things going on. And when you have an exciting game like that, you got to realize, the last time that happened was in '93, sadly enough to say, that we took down a number one. And this being Brian Kelly's biggest game, this is what all these emotions are about. So that it was awesome. You had a chance to kind of experience that. That's cool.
Well, and let me mention maybe one other thing, if you don't mind, that I think makes it so much more special is that, as you know, all those kids, as you and I went through college there too, what Notre Dame tries to do, compete for national titles in every sport, and trying to, all those kids are going to, today, whether they were in the classroom or doing a Zoom class, they're competing in the classroom with a bunch of valedictorians from around the country. And they're doing it in an environment that's, based in Catholicism. I don't think there's, you could argue, I'm not sure what other student athlete in the country is held to that standard on the field, off the field,
absolutely,
and in the community. And I think that's what's special. And we're not making excuses. We're not trying to, dumb down our academics. We're not trying to make it easier on the players. So winning a game like that is, I think, has a special meaning, and just endorses that you can do it all. You don't have to sacrifice any of those areas to get it done.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. It's something special, and it's an amazing experience that, a lot of folks just don't, they've never been a part of that. And it's tough to kind of explain because, unless you've done it, it's really hard to explain. Really. So that is awesome. And that's I got chills talking about it, man. That's great. All right. So we have so much to unpack here, man. This is so cool because I mentioned that you were my big brother. But we're going to talk about that. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about how you got involved in athletics. You actually, I don't know if a lot of people know, but you played baseball at Notre Dame as well. So we're going to talk about that. But first, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in sports as a kid.
I just think it was something, like you, it's just I just enjoyed it. My first experiences, when I think back on that question, I was in first grade, and every first grader is probably asked by their teacher, what do they want? What do you want to be when you're older?
Sure.
And I still remember to this day, at the time, I said I wanted to be a Minnesota Viking.
Wow. Are you serious?
I'm serious, dead serious. And as a third and fourth grader, I was playing on 2 football teams. I just loved football for whatever reason. I didn't have a lot of talent, as you know, but I just had a dying passion for the game. I just
Right.
I love the game. I love athletics. You love just the pursuit of trying to capitalize on the God-given talents, or the talents that God's given you to the best of your ability. And that's what's so phenomenal about sports on an individual basis. But
Right.
then being part of that experience this past Saturday, or, being part of the experience with you in college. And then, we were lucky enough to play together. Obviously, my last year in the league in '95 in Chicago. I mean, and then being able to get on the phone with your little brother and a former teammate, it's what it's all. And hearing that you were with Pat and Tim, watching the game. I mean, it's a whole life experience, and it's
Right.
and only part of it is suiting up, for 4 years in college.
Okay, so you obviously have the grades. Obviously, hold on one second. I'm trying to. I gotta.
So I think you might. There you are.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay. We're going to just chalk that up for a mental error.
Okay, so you are. I mean, you go to Yale after high school. Was that kind of on this path of going toward the Minnesota Vikings? I mean, how does Yale Minnesota Vikings work out?
It really doesn't. And my senior year in high school, when we're all faced with adversity, not once but multiple times in life. And my senior year in high school, after about 6 games, I broke my collarbone, and I was running back at St. Thomas Academy up in St. Paul, Minnesota. And being a slow white running back out of Minnesota and only playing half of your senior year in high school doesn't do much in terms of Division I interest. So, and I did have some interest Division I, but it kind of fell away, right?
Okay.
It was on the sidelines. And, ironically, my last high school football game, I was still on the sidelines. I was just about ready to be cleared. We were playing in our first playoff game against Cretin High School, which is where Steve Walsh, who's the quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes that we played in '88, played quarterback for this rival high school, which is also Catholic and military, called Cretin High School. So my high school career was over, and a lot of the Division I schools, like I said, and there wasn't a lot, but the ones that were interested kind of lost interest. And so I had the opportunity to go to different colleges, and so I chose Yale. But I got to Yale, Chris, and I remember at the end of my freshman fall year, we had to play freshman football, and my dad came out and we played Harvard. We beat Harvard, the freshman team. We go over to the stadium in the Yale Bowl, and we're watching the varsity, and it's a great school. But the stands, it holds if you've ever been to the Yale Bowl, I mean, it holds maybe 70, 80,000 people. There might have been 30,000 at the game. And, I kind of turned to my dad and I said, I don't know if this is your standard freshman, indecision on asking yourself, is this the right place? I'll finish out, my freshman year here. But I'm going to put a transfer application into Notre Dame. And I had been given a walk-on, coming out of high school at Notre Dame, an invite-on, I guess they call it. But I got to the end of the year, my freshman year, and George Kelly, who's a great guy, was the coach at Yale that had recruited me out of Minnesota. And I went to his office and I said, Coach Kelly, I've made the decision to transfer to the University of Notre Dame. And he said, Pat, I think you're making a big mistake. We got plans for you on the varsity. You'll never play. And when he said, I'll never play, I kind of reflected on that afterwards. And I said, I'd rather transfer and never play than stay at Yale. And, if that was the easier route, that was kind of unacceptable to me. And the only thing for me, and this was, it's a great place, Yale's a great place, but they weren't going to try to win a national title. And so they, as I mentioned earlier tonight, the great thing about what Notre Dame did on Saturday night, you can go to Notre Dame. You don't have to sacrifice athletics for academics or academics for athletics. And you can do it and pursue your spiritual growth all at one place. And that's really what appealed to me. So I came back through South Bend and sat down with our good friend, Coach Holtz. And I said, Coach, I'm transferring in. I'd love to have the opportunity to walk on the team. And he said, Pat Eilers' son, as you know, and he said, if I'll let you walk on. And I said, can I earn a scholarship? And he said, if you're vying for a starting position, it's my protocol to give players scholarships. So it was game on, Z.
Okay. So that was Holtz's first year, right?
Fall. Yeah, he had come in the spring. So he had one spring practice with everybody, and I came that fall and was ineligible, and was a scout team running back for that fall.
Wait, okay. So when you're making this decision, I mean, you talked to your parents. I mean, and I know you talked to the coach. I mean, was it all you? I mean, Yale's a pretty damn good school.
No, it's a great school, and it was just my dad. I guess my dad had gone to Notre Dame. I'd been to some a game of fall as a kid, probably 3 or 4 times, and I just had a vision. I had a vision of what college football was like, and it's a stadium that's full of people. It's trying to compete for the national title, and that's just that's what appealed to me. That was what it was important for me to try.
Well, yeah, but I mean, no one. I mean, Rudy. I mean, everybody wants to play at Notre Dame. I mean, everybody wants to transfer to Notre Dame. I mean, how is it that? I mean, you talked about Notre Dame was looking at you as a walk-on or something.
As a walk-on, yeah, in high school, coming out.
Okay, so that's something you didn't want, or you didn't feel like you were ready at that point, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. I think coming out of high school, I kind of had despite my first grade objective, right? I might have lost a little confidence being injured and not having the scholarship, and kind of second guessing myself, and it was the wrong decision, And I think when you're faced in life with these decisions that aren't. There's a logical decision, and then there's the decision that's based in the heart. And, I've made a couple logical decisions in my life. And the better decisions I make are usually the ones that I make with my heart.
Okay. All right. Which is a great segue into your wife, Jana, right? You want to segue into that one or what?
We all outkicked our coverage.
we all, believe me, I totally understand. Okay. So, Yale, you have the grades. I mean, you get to Notre Dame. Did you know you wanted to play baseball? Or, I mean, you obviously played in high school as well.
Yeah.
I mean, was that something that you were going to do at Yale anyway, or?
I did play baseball at Yale as well. So my freshman year, I played freshman football, and then I played on the varsity baseball team. And then getting to Notre Dame, trying to earn the spot in football, once I was, Coach Holtz, I give him a hard time not being a great recruiter because I ended up cracking the lineup. But once I was able to crack the lineup, then I asked him if I could, I wanted to play, so I was able, he afforded us, myself and Frank Jacobs, remember our tight end?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Frank and I were base, and the rule was if if we had a game, we could go to baseball. If we had practice for baseball and football, we would go to football.
Okay.
And there were times we had football in the afternoon and baseball at night. It was nuts, but it was so much fun. I mean, baseball is just such a different, it's a different sport, right? It's relaxed, and you don't, you would not have been a great, our dispositions on the football field don't necessarily translate to the baseball field.
No, I don't think so. And you're actually a pretty good baseball player. How did you do it in Notre Dame?
No, just, Coach Murphy, Pat Murphy, who's with the Milwaukee Brewers today. He's the assistant coach for Craig Counsell, who was a teammate of ours when we were in school. It's so much fun because I get to a Milwaukee Brewers game a couple times a year and get to see Craig and Pat. It was a blast, anyways, it was a blast.
I'm talking about how good you were.
Oh, no, I wasn't that good. I was good enough. I wasn't that good though. Yeah.
You're playing collegiate baseball and collegiate football.
There is the only reason I know this fact is, I was, again, Holtz made I don't know if Coach knew I was in the game, or he probably thought Mark Green or Ricky Waters was in the backfield. But, I was able to get the ball in Miami, and then we were down playing for the football game, and then we were down in Miami playing baseball. And so I was able to score the winning run in baseball against Miami down there.
You're kidding me.
Last, yeah.
That is awesome. That is a unknown fact. I'm not sure a lot of people know that.
No, a little known fact, yeah.
That is awesome. See me, you're full of these interesting facts. It's awesome. All right, so there had to be an adjustment for you from going to Yale to now playing with the big boys. Practicing and stuff like that. It had to be totally different for you.
Yeah. Well, because you were my little brother, but we were all scared to death of of Coach Holtz, and so I think but it was for me, I think the motivation came from I had made the transfer decision.
Right.
I thought there weren't probably many people on the face of the earth that thought that was a good idea. And so that was always kind of a motivating factor. In fact, we were chatting before, the flag in the background, that's the Betsy Ross flag with 13 stars. When I got to Notre Dame, you remember Gene, who was the equipment manager, who was a very stingy equipment manager.
Oh, yeah. We all know got stories on that one.
Right. But he said, I got 2 jersey numbers for you. One was 13. And I thought, if I'm going against the odds, I might as well make it as remarkable as possible. So I said, give me 13 and let's go. So every day I put that on, and it was the motivation is I wanted to try to make this not a bad decision in retrospect, or have people look at me and think I was totally nuts.
That is hilarious. Wow. All right. So there was a program, and obviously I didn't know about it yet, but Holtz assigned upperclassmen to incoming freshmen. I'm assuming that's how it started, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you weren't like, hey, I'll take Chris, the kid from Chicago. I'm sure they're just like, Pat, Chris, And I'm assuming they were trying to match personalities. Now, I was quiet, kind of reserved. So I'm assuring at that point, they kind of made sure that you and I were a perfect fit.
We were a perfect fit. And I do remember it. I'm going to, not embarrass you, but you probably don't remember. I do remember getting assigned. I remember you coming in, and I remember you wanted to be Dick Buckus. I think, right?
That is correct. No, absolutely right. I went to the same high school, CBS.
100%. You wanted to be Dick Buckus. You were hell-bent to be a linebacker at the University of Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
And just like I was moved around like 4 or 5 times, if Pat Terrell, your good friend, could have caught, had any hand, I probably would have. I would have been able to play safety at Notre Dame and went to been like a pretender slot receiver, and then went to safety in the NFL. But I remember vividly, and I don't know if you recall, you got moved, to D line. You were distraught. Remember this? You were distraught, and we were talking after practice, and I don't know if you remember this, but I said, Chris, listen, I'm getting moved all over the place. The only thing that matters is that you get on the field as quickly as possible, wherever you possibly can get on the field. And if Coach Holtz is moving you, and was it John Palermo was a D-line coach at the time? I said, all you tell them, and you tell JP that you're not moving to D-line not to start. And you just make it impossible wherever they put you to keep you off the field. And it was a tough time. I mean, talk about adversity for you coming out of CVS, wanting to be a linebacker at the University of Notre Dame. And next thing, you remind me of Al Noga was the other. Al was
Minnesota.
He was the other free agent that made the Vikings the year, he and I made the Vikings, but, shorter than the average typical D lineman, but had a motor that would not stop, and that was the secret. You became an All-American in college and an All-Pro in the NFL. And, just like John Randall, Hall of Famer, right, in the NFL, was a free agent. It doesn't matter. And for anybody any little kid that's listening to this call, it doesn't matter the color of your skin, how fast you can run, how high you can jump,
how short you are.
All that matters is what you got in the heart and how important it is to you. Does it really matter? And are you gonna put it out there more than anybody else and just keep coming? That's all you have to do. And I don't know if you remember this, Z, but I do remember it vividly, you being distraught. And I was, I could understand your disappointment.
Of course.
But look at what you did. I mean, it's awesome. You didn't let it take you down. You just said, let's keep going. Let's double chin strap it and let's roll. And that's what you got to do.
I don't remember that specific talk, but I do remember our talks, and I remember you telling me that, this is an amazing opportunity, but it was resonating that you weren't, I'm sorry, they moved you around as well. And I do remember you telling me, not at that time, but I remember you telling me that you just go out and give 100% every play. And I did, but I didn't realize my role. So I was giving 100%, but I was giving 100% against the starters, and I was kind of pissing them off.
Yeah.
So when you told that story, I started laughing because I remember that. All right. So I was fortunate enough to be Andy's roommate. How did you and Andy Heck become boys?
It's interesting. Andy and I just, kind of cut, I think, from the same cloth, maybe, mentally or so. But Andy and I just got along. For whatever reason, I don't know, got to know him and his family and Jen really well. Talk about another guy I'm really proud of. I do tell him, though, by the way, he's, for people that don't know where Andy's at today, Andy Heck was a teammate of Chris and I. He played at the Bears as well. He was a tight end that became a tackle, and he's now the offensive line coach at the Kansas City Chiefs. And I tell Andy, I said, Andy, I could be the offensive line coach for the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. In fact, I think I could be an offensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs. No, Andy's done a phenomenal job. It couldn't have happened, to, as you know, Z, to a nicer person and to a nicer family. He and Jen and their kids, and now Charlie's, playing for the Texans. It's just phenomenal. You're just so happy and proud.
And Charlie's his son. Do you remember we used to get football cards in the mail, and people would sign them and send them back? Do you remember on one of the cards they misspelled heck?
Oh, yeah.
So for years we called them Hetch. Remember that?
So do you remember? So we'd all, gather for team meetings in an auditorium, right? And Coach Holtz, we'd always be in our seats 5 minutes before the start of the meeting, or else you were late. And I do remember one time. Do you remember this? Coach Holtz was writing up on the board. I don't know why Andy's name was up there, but it was. And he spelt it H-E-C-H. And I was about falling out of my chair. I think he was sitting in front of me. I think I was kicking his chair.
And as a captain,
God bless,
in 80,
God bless
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, kind of going along those lines, I mean, you have to give me your best Holtz story that happened to you. I mean, we've all shared a bunch of stories, crazy ones for practice and trying to return a punt, breaking his finger. But I could imagine he probably had some good conversations with you trying to motivate you.
Yeah. Well, there's
someone who's self-motivated, by the way. I just want to point that out.
I'll tell you about, if you don't mind, two quick instances. One was that spring of my sophomore year when I transferred, right? And I was scout team running back and talking about giving it 100%. Cedric Figaro, who was a teammate of Chris and I, had a cast on, and I would always run 50 yards. And everybody would have to tag off, right? and Fig would try to swing me. A few times he got me in the helmet with his cast. But that spring I got moved to strong safety, and coached during practice. In fact, it was against. This is really funny. It was against Andy was playing tight end at the time, and he arc blocked. So if you're tight end, you're arc blocking. If you're the end of the line, you arc block out. And right. I'm playing strong safety, so I came up. I'm supposed to have contain, right? And force and minimize the running lane and force the running back into the linebackers and the D line. And Andy came out and he got into my jersey and held me. Holtz blew the whistle, stopped practice, was screaming at me and said, Pat Eilers, son, maybe you should have kept your ass at Yale. And I kind of uncharacteristically, I said, it kind of, set me off, because that was everything that was going to just go away. I was going to the permanent penalty box, never to be heard from again, right? And I said, Coach Holtz, I didn't transfer not to play. And it kind of caught him by surprise, and he looked at me and he goes, okay, run it again. And so I exchanged a few words that I'm probably not proud of between me and Andy. And I said, please don't hold me this time. And so I came up and I did my job, and he came by and he goes, son, I think you're going to be all right. And that was it. And that was, I think, a pretty critical juncture for me and Coach Holtz. He tried to break you, right? If he could break you, he didn't want you. If he couldn't break you, you just kept coming, and that's what he wanted. And I think that's why we were successful. There was one other time, I'll be quick. When the year we went undefeated, we played Navy, and remember how that wasn't our best game of the year.
Right, I remember that.
And I had gotten a holding penalty the prior week, and he said, if you ever hold again, Pat, you're never playing for me again. So I think I got called against Navy for holding, and I had to go see him on Monday. And so I came into his office, and so Coach isn't that tall for people on the podcast that don't know. He's probably 5'7", 5'8".
Maybe. Yeah, you're being kind.
So, and when you go in his desk, the chair behind the desk is pretty high. The chair in front of the desk,
right, exactly.
So I'm staring up at him despite being probably 5 inches taller. And I said, Coach, I know you're a man of your word. I know you told me if I ever held again, I would never play. I will go to the scout squad. I will be the best performing scout squad player Notre Dame has ever seen. And I'm sorry. And that's it. And it wasn't, he was trying to, I think he was, and I didn't sleep the night before, right?
No, of course.
Thinking about all the excuses I could go through. And I was like, you know what? There are no excuses. Man up and take,
Right.
to his credit, it caught him a little bit off by surprise, Chris. And he said, Pat, I wish I could. If I had somebody else that I could put in there.
Right. That was his response. You totally took him off guard. That's awesome.
And I saw those were the 2 times when I was at Notre Dame, I saw my whole career, being, forever, exiled.
That is awesome, man. Hey, we're going to do a little commercial, and on the way back, we're going to finish up your career at Notre Dame. Hold on 1 second. All right, so we have tons and tons of Holtz stories, so let's fast forward. 2 things about the Miami game. One, where were you at during the fight? And 2, you've got to walk us through your touchdown.
Okay, during the fight, I think, like you, we were all in the field, right? We were going through pregame. I don't know if we were still doing offense, defense, or we were in,
punt return or what, right?
Punt return or extra points. I think we might have been in special teams at the time. In Miami, just because of, the swagger they think they bring, most teams would have a little respect and go around you and then go to the tunnel. They got done before us. I think maybe in retrospect, Z, by design.
Of course.
And they came through our practice. In our punt, and everybody started looking around like, what is going on, right? And I was just on the field with everybody else, and I think we all found it kind of unacceptable, and kind of the tensions ran kind of high. But I honestly think it backfired on them. I really do, Z. I think them coming in to the house that Rockne built that represents Mary, the mother of God, and kind of disrespecting us as they did. And the fact that we kind of made a stand, I'm proud of what we did. And it's a little bit, if you think about last Saturday night, it's a little bit like the post-game celebration. It was spontaneous.
Right.
It wasn't planned. Maybe there's certain aspects of it that you're not necessarily proud of, as Coach Holtz told us right before when we went into the locker room before the game. But I think it was a seminal moment. I think it set the tone, and we were there to fight.
Okay, so tell us about the touchdown. Yeah, walk us through that, man. That's the exciting part, man.
No, well, I think if you recall the play before, Ricky Waters and Ricky and I would exchange run-in plays along with myself, Ricky, and Rocket.
Right.
We typically bring in the plays, and Ricky had just had run. I think Cowboy was the play, and 325, and caught a corner route for about a 40-yard gain down to the 3-yard line. And maybe Coach, maybe he was a little excited he forgot to keep Ricky in or to put Rocket in, but so he gave me the play, and we were, so as a slot receiver, we would run full house of full backfield, right? Okay. So we put the slot receiver, the tailback, Mark Green, and then Anthony Johnson was, it was either Anthony or Braxton at fullback. Maybe it was Braxton Banks. But the call was to me, and, I went around to the right-hand side. I had, Mark Green was on the D end. Braxton was up on the middle linebacker, and I got to go behind Big Dean Brown. God rest his soul. No, and anybody could have gotten the end zone behind Big Dean. So, and I was no exception. So it was phenomenal, and it was in the end zone furthest away from Touchdown Jesus, which was really kind of cool because when you turn around, you can see Touchdown Jesus. And, it was just, I kind of thought back running off the field back to that, that seminal moment at Yale when, Coach, Kelly said I'd never play. And so that was really fun to be able to contribute, but it was a team effort. Obviously, anybody could have got in there with behind Dean.
No, man, that's awesome, man. And I mean the excitement because I think a couple weeks or something like that, I saw a picture of it, and the excitement you had when you scored, man, it was crazy, man. I mean, oftentimes I only scored once in my career, but when you score, you just kind of lose it. I mean, I never had any idea what I wanted to do. All of a sudden, you just feel this emotion, and I remember it was great, man. It was great.
Yeah, I wish I would have acted like I had been there before. But.
So, I mean, you say that's kind of funny. Holtz always used to tell us, act like you've been there. And, someone like Rocket who scores several touchdowns a game, gets the ball, he'll hit a knee, say a prayer, and give the ball to the ref, right? I mean, that's just his thing. And those of us who don't get there that often, that kind of goes out the door. I think it goes out the window because you got all this emotion going, oh, my God, I just crossed the line, so. Yeah.
Well, and in fact, I had never been there before, if you think about it.
But that touchdown, I mean, that was it, man. I mean, if not for that, if you tripped, we wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have a cup that says, NBA champions.
Well, I don't know about that. Somebody else would have done it maybe a little bit more gracefully, but.
You are too kind. All right. So now let's talk about your pro career, because this is amazing, because you had a coach that told you, hey, you won't make it at Notre Dame, but then you have a chance to spend 5 years, 5 years?
6, yeah, 6 actually.
6 years in the NFL. How does that happen for somebody who was told that they couldn't make it?
Again, I think it just goes back to, daring to, I think showing up is important. I think, not listening to anybody else. No one knows yourself better than you do. And, coming out of Notre Dame, I was a receiver. I was a slot receiver, and there's no way, I had 2 free agent offers as a receiver and 2 as a safety. And so I went to the Vikings as a safety, and probably, was probably they weren't intending for me to make the team. But, guys like John Randall and myself, you didn't ever quit. And I do remember training camp with, going one-on-ones with Anthony Carter, Chris Carter, a guy named Hassan Jones, Steve Jordan. 3 of those 4 guys were all pros. And I was really fortunate. Coach that is now retired, Jerry Brown, was a defensive back coach. He went to Northwestern afterwards. He was the assistant head coach there under Fitz for a long time.
Okay.
He gave me every opportunity to learn and to understand how to play safety, not having played for 2 years. And I do remember when it looked like Jerry Burns was the head coach. And at the first preseason game, pregame, Jerry came up to me and he goes, Pat, you got to make every single tackle on kickoff, period. And I said, I got you, coach. And on the first kickoff, I made the tackle, and I came off the sideline, and Jerry said, that's only one,
Wow.
So you just, and then towards the end, I'll just tell you real quickly, I don't know if you remember, Floyd Peters was our D coordinator. And, he was a phenomenal D coordinator. And Floyd didn't really want to keep me, but I played well on special teams, and I could back up a lot of the different positions on defense in the backfield. And Floyd said, Eilers, it looks like I'm going to have to keep you. See that man over there? And he pointed to Joey Browner, okay, who was just, the first guy in safety to make $1 million a year, USC grad. Joey. Right. Joey's brother Ross played at Notre Dame.
Right.
He goes, Eilers, you can't make any mistakes. And see that man over there, and he pointed to Joey, he goes, and that man can't make any mistakes. If he does, it's your fault and you get fired. And I said, but I said, coach, but every time Joey makes a mistake, he intercepts the ball. And he started laughing because it was true. And he just, Joey was phenomenal. He goes, but if he doesn't, I still cut you off. And I said, fair.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, did you feel that, you could be cut at any moment?
Oh, yeah. No, and that's why I always worked during the off season. I wasn't like you. I wasn't good enough not to work during the off season, but, I'd spent 2 years in Minnesota and then 3 in Washington, D.C., and was fortunate enough. I don't know if you remember when I came to the Bears and walked in the locker room, you and I were all of a sudden locker room mates.
Again, that was awesome.
It was probably like a nightmare for you, Z.
Please. Was Andy there at the time?
Yeah, and we had Andy, Anthony Johnson, Steve Walsh was there, Lindsey Knapp, and I'm trying to think if there was another Notre Dame person on the team. I'll have to think about it, but yeah.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
We had a few Notre Damers.
All right, so when do you know? All right, so you fulfilled your first grade dream, right? Want to play for the Vikes?
Yeah.
Right. So then you go to Washington. How was that transition? Is it something that you wanted to do, or did you feel that, hey, I need to go ahead and make this move for a better opportunity?
Yeah, Dennis Green came in as a new head coach at the Vikings and left me on Plan B. If you recall, when they used to have that.
Right.
I remember talking to Dennis and then the general manager, and I said, if you guys, don't think I'm going to be competing for a starting job, I'm better going somewhere else. And I had different free agent offers and made the decision, for that reason. But I will tell you, everything happens for a reason, Z. And, I was able to play for Joe Gibbs, just a phenomenal, one of the best people you're ever going to meet, bar none. And that was a real great experience. There were great men playing for the, Washington Redskins.
So you ended up in Chicago. You haven't left the area. What was so good about Chicago that you wanted to stay here? So 3 years in DC, I came to Chicago initially before actually even the D coordinator for the Bears called me, Bob Slowett, to work for Jay Jordan and Tom Quinn, who were great to you as well. We were both absolutely
fortunate. So I worked there for the off season. The Bears called. Andy called me, said Bob Slowett was looking for you, and I said, "Come on, Andy." And sure enough, he was. So I signed with the Bears, played there for a season, and I remember at the end of the season, I don't know if you recall this, but in '95 it was the last game of the season at Soldier Field, and the 49ers had already secured home field advantage through the playoffs. I think they were 14-2 or something like that. And we were 9-7, but the 49ers, we needed to, I think we needed them. We had won and we needed them to win, and they lost.
Right.
And I remember walking off of Soldier Field, and listen, I was 6 years in, I was stealing anyways, and I just remember thinking, this is maybe the last time I'll ever play professional football. And the following, a week later on a Monday morning, I was up in Deerfield with, behind the desk working for, Tom and Jay. Wow. So that was, but it was, I was very blessed to have played as long as I did.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because you have a very interesting story here. You worked for a little bit, then you got back involved in football. So let's talk a little bit about what you we're doing it for Tom and Jay for a couple of years, and then kind of went off on your own, I believe.
Yeah. Well, I worked for Tom and Jay for a while. I went back to business school at Northwestern and then worked here in Chicago at a firm called Madison Dearborn Partners,
Okay.
a private equity firm. When I was there, though, I think you might be referring to back in, it was like 2015, I think, if I remember correctly. I was at town in Kyle McCarthy, who was another Notre Dame safety who had come down with cancer at Notre Dame. He was on the staff. He was a graduate assistant.
Right.
So I called down to the director of football operations who I knew, and I said, Chad, I just read about Kyle. I don't know. I know him, but I don't know him that well. Do me a favor. This is the chairman of the urology department at at Northwestern. And make sure that Kyle gets this guy's name, calls him, because I'm pretty, his cancer it's not a very frequent cancer, but it's very curable if you get it early. So just do me a favor, get it to him. And Chad said to me, that's great, Pat, I will. He said, I kind of have a problem, though, because we start the season in a week. And we might be down a safety coach. So do me a favor, let me know if you can think of anybody in the country that might be able to help us out. So this was on Friday. So the following Monday, or maybe it was Saturday, the next day, I was thinking about it. So I sent him a note. I just said, hey, Chad, anybody I can think of is already employed, coaching.
Right.
But I said, I didn't, I think my words were something like this. I didn't play 6 years in the NFL because I was fast or athletic. But I said, I have two girls at Notre Dame. I got a place down there. If you need a quick fix, if Kyle's got to go get chemo or, see the doctor for a week and you want someone to stand in. I did play for, Floyd Peters, and then Richie Pettibone was one of the, best D coordinators ever in the league. So I understood football, and I said, if I can help out, I'd be my pleasure, but, do what's best for, Notre Dame's football program. So about a day later, I get an email saying, Pat, give me a call. So I called him, and he said, if you weren't just kidding, I talked to BK or Brian Kelly, and, we're really in a bind. And I said, you must be. And he said, if you're okay with it, we'd like to take you up on it. We got clearance from the NCAA. And I said, let me do this. I got to talk to two people. I got to talk to the boss woman, Jana.
Right.
and I got to talk to our chairman at Madison Dearborn, a guy named John Canning, who's one of the world's great guys. And so I talked to John, and John said, let me understand this. And I said, well, John, I said, we have two bye weeks this fall. Both my board meetings for the companies that I sit on, the boards that I've invested on behalf of our limited partners, are during those bye weeks. So I can make the board meetings. And he goes, well, if you don't do it, I will. And he
kind of gave you that nod, right?
He gave me the nod to have a little bit of, I've been there 15 years. So I took like a 3-month sabbatical. I mean, I still was able, I had a team back in Chicago. I was still able to work and still fulfill my responsibilities there. And then I talked to Jana. It was so funny that I think it's a funny story for anybody that has a wife. Jana's big concern with Z was, what are people going to think is wrong with your and my relationship?
That's great.
So when Brian, I was sitting down, so I went down, literally I sent that email on a Friday. I was down in South Bend the following Thursday talking to Brian.
Oh my God.
And Brian said, so what are your big concerns? And I said to Brian, I'm sure there's going to be times, at 2 a.m. when I'm walking across the street back to Eddy Street, asking myself, what did I do? And he goes, oh, for sure, 100%. And then the other thing I said, you probably can't help me with this one, but Jana's all concerned that people are going to think something's wrong. And with our relationship. And Brian turned to Chad and said, we have that one game a year where we invite the spouses. Make sure Jana's on the flight sitting next to Pat. And then Brian turned back to me, and he's really, Brian, if I don't know, he's got a really good sense of humor. He goes, Pat, I got you covered in South Bend. I can't help you in Chicago.
That's great.
So I ended
up
coaching that fall, and then came back the following fall and worked on the weekends. And then, I got the nod to maybe come on, full time as a quality control coach. But we have our last child as a senior at Loyola Academy here in Chicago, and so I wanted to see him through high school, and
that's Patrick, right?
That's Patrick, yeah.
Okay.
So, anyways, there you have it. That's the story.
Well, first of all, one, who does that? It just talks about the commitment that you have to the University of Notre Dame. Second of all, being able to go into your boss and say, hey, I got this idea. I got a sabbatical. I'm going to go play football for a little bit. I mean, that's something that not very many people can do. And so I wanted to not only commend you as a fellow teammate, little brother, but just as a great stand-up guy. You kind of saw a need and you did what you could do to fill it, which is just awesome. Well,
I'll tell you, and Z, you're nice, but it was it's when you have a unique opportunity to offer and contribute back to something that you believe in, that was a real neat opportunity for me. I really enjoyed it. If you remember Mike Zorich, who died overseas, and I'm not saying what I did was even, near what he did, but there are times in life that, you're going to have an opportunity to give back. And I remember, it's funny, BK said, I'm going to pay you a stipend. And I said, no, you're not. I'm not getting paid to do this. So that's not the reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it because, we got a man down, and, we got to roll. And literally 1 week later, we were playing. I think we opened up against Rice, if I recall. So it was a neat opportunity.
That's crazy, man. That is absolutely insane. Again, I don't know how many people would actually do that, and who actually kind of started the conversation, as opposed to just going, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. I mean, it wasn't like you applied or anything. You're just like, hey, we got a guy down. How can I help? And again,
they asked me to think about it, and I couldn't come up with any solutions other than saying and I said I could be here for a week, I could be here 2 days, and I could probably last through the season. And what happened to Kyle, I should give you the update on him real quickly.
Please.
He's one of the world's great guys. He's now he and his wife Kelsey are pregnant with their second kid. He had testicular cancer, so it was, it wasn't clear that he'd ever be able to have kids. And so, Kyle ended up having this really intense surgery that took him out that entire November. I mean, where they had to open up, it had spread to his lymph nodes, and they had to open him up, sternum down to navel. So, it helped Kyle out on a personal level. I'd like to think I didn't do too much damage to the secondary trying to help out. And so it was, and my I got to see my daughters every Thursday night. That was the one night you have off when you're in college football, and take them to dinner. So that was a neat experience.
Now, my understanding, at least one of them is carrying on the Eilers legacy of athletics. Is that right? One or both of them?
I had three daughters.
Right.
All three have now graduated from Notre Dame. The second one, so Elizabeth's 27 here in Chicago. She's an artist. She just got out of the Art Institute downtown.
Nice.
Catherine was the one who played lacrosse.
Okay, lacrosse, right.
Women's lacrosse at Notre Dame. And she was at Morgan Stanley for 2.5 years now. She's taken a job with Campbell Lutyens. She's in financial services. And
Claire?
Yeah, Claire, my third daughter, just graduated last spring, and she's working for BAML, Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Both her and Catherine are, are based in Manhattan, but are working out of Winnetka, which is a suburb of Chicago.
Nice.
Which has been great to have them home. But
I'm sure, absolutely. So that doesn't put too much pressure on Patrick, or is he already brainwashed? I mean, how does that work?
The kid is pretty brainwashed for sure.
I mean, come on, man. Like dad pops up and leaves to go coach there. I mean, come on, here's another amazing thing, and this is just again talks about what Pat has done for the university. Can you talk a little bit about the is it Jana and Pat, or Pat or Jana Eilers defensive back position? Whose name is first? I forgot which one.
Oh, doesn't matter. No, it's just the Eilers family.
Okay.
It's kind of funny because our good buddy, Todd Light, came in and was coaching the DBs. And, to whom, I kind of go by the motto, and we've all been blessed beyond what we deserve, Z, right? So to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So we had the opportunity to give back to Notre Dame, it was great when T Light was the coach. We had a lot of fun talking about things, and so it was just it was my opportunity. I was put on scholarship by Coach Holtz, and I thought if I ever had the means to pay back the scholarship, I wanted to be able to do that. So,
and you're being very modest. You actually paid the position. So every time somebody talks about the defensive backs coach at Notre Dame, they have to say the Eilers defensive back coach. That's awesome, man. That's cool. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how kind of you got into the energy and power space. But before we do that, the last time we were on a Zoom call together, it was a couple months ago, and NBC Sports was playing a replay of the 90 Orange Bowl. And I got this crazy idea to grab a whole bunch of guys and put them on a Zoom call. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had a bunch of guys in the first half, a bunch of guys in the second half. And it was really interesting because, there were a couple of guys that were enjoying themselves, enjoying a couple of libations and everything. I think you even had a glass of wine. But what was really great was at one, so you got to understand this. Half the guys are watching the game, half the guys are yelling, half the guys haven't talked to each other in a while. So it's just total chaos. And I'm sitting there trying to moderate everything. Hey, wait, hold on. And we got Ned Bolkar, who I've done on the show, was dropping F-bombs and stuff. I'm like, oh my God, Ned, come on. And, he had a couple cocktails. But it was interesting because we had, and this was kind of really organic, we had started talking about our teammates that are no longer with us. And out of the blue, you drop the mic moment. And I say that because Anthony Johnson, who was one of our teammates during this time, also played professionally. He's a minister.
Correct.
And out of the blue, you were like, hey, AJ, give us a prayer for all of our fallen brothers. And I got the chills kind of talking about it right now, man, but it was just this organic moment. We got guys who are drinking, we got guys dropping F-bombs. Everybody was just automatically quiet. And AJ said a prayer. And believe me, I had no idea when we were going to put this together that we would spend like a minute and a half kind of honoring, but it was because of you. And I think that's really admirable because although we had talked about the guys, our fallen brothers who are no longer with us, you had this idea of just, hey, let's just say a prayer. And it just so happens one of the teammates that was on the call is a minister. I thought that was just, it was a great thing. And like I said, I got the chills talking about it.
Well, I think, Z, that's, when you go back, we keep talking about it, and people that don't like Notre Dame, I can't help them, but, and I think what we all took from it, was, developing our spirituality and it was just the right thing to do, right? it wasn't hard. And AJ is one of the world's great guys, as you know. And it was great that we could throw it up for a lot of our teammates that are no longer with us, but are in heaven, and hopefully they're looking down on us and they're going to take care of us. So.
That's amazing, man. That's absolutely amazing. All right, so now you majored in like 5 things at Notre Dame, right?
No, I did 2 degrees, but I was in college for 5 years. So
Okay. Sorry.
No.
Well, here's the funniest story about being on the Bears. And a lot of people don't know this, and I don't think a lot of people were paying attention during our one team meeting. So I got Pat Eilers in there, Andy Hex in there. I think Jim Flanagan was there at the time.
Flanny, yeah, of course. How could we forget Flanny?
So we're talking about some really, really smart guys, right? And Dave was trying to do this. I'm sorry, Dave Wannstedt, the head coach, was trying to give us this motivational pep talk. And he was talking about what are your options? And if you're not doing this, what would you be doing? And he said something, I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but he said something like, what would you guys be doing? Janitors or high school gym teachers? And I'm looking over at Pat. I'm like, this guy has 6 degrees from Notre Dame. He's like a genius. All these other guys, I just thought it was so funny because and it's just my personal opinion, he wasn't a very good motivator, but he obviously didn't know his crowd. And so he's sitting there saying, oh, you guys are going to be gym teachers and janitors. I'm like, well, no, I got this guy who majored in biochemical engineering or something like that sitting right next to me. So what the hell are you talking about? I don't know if you remember that, but I thought it was hilarious.
It's funny. Well, I won't disparage Dave. He's very religious.
That's okay. I'm sure he's not listening. I do it all the time. So don't worry.
He's very good. But yeah, he's a Miami guy. He was defensive coordinator at Miami when we beat him. What do you expect? I remember when I was up with the Vikings in my first week in training camp. Z, I don't know if this happened to you, but one of the guys came up to me and said, you're never going to make it. And I said, is that so? I said, why is that? He goes, because you have options. He goes, you won't make it. He goes, you won't make it. Trust me. And I said, we'll see about that. So it's I think it was exactly what Dave was trying to do in a different way. But again, I'm going to go back. Obviously I'm biased for ND, but the great thing about Notre Dame is that all of us got out of there. Z, you came in, you were against all odds in the classroom a little bit. I don't know if your audience knows that. It wasn't like, this was a easy thing for you to do. And, you came in, you did great. You got a law degree. Come on, let's go. Don't tell them, don't tell them, don't give me that garbage. You know what I mean? You wanted it. And, you had all the talent on the field. Then, you overcame some challenges that you had in the classroom. You rocked it. And I couldn't be prouder.
I'm getting fired up, man. You're getting me fired up, man. What do you need, coach? All right. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. And tell us how you got into the power and energy space. Because, again, with 5 degrees from Notre Dame, and I'm assuming that's what you go into, private equity, but explain to us a little bit.
No, I came out of business school, went to Madison, Dearborn, and just got started getting staffed on companies that dealt in the energy and power space, and it just kind of organically evolved from there. And so I, make investments in wind farms and in solar farms and in gas-fired generation and in pipelines and liquefied natural gas facilities. So that's kind of in energy storage deals. So that's kind of just, where I've, made my day job living. And I really enjoy it. I think, part of for me, the, kind of the thrill of it is nothing. Yeah, and if you think about just the evolution of society and increasing people's living standard, if you can get them cheap, renewable, sustainable electricity, that takes people out of poverty. It makes third world countries, second world, first world countries. So that, to me has been, you can do well by the endowments that give us money to invest in those deals and do right by society. So, that's just, I guess where God wanted me.
So this wasn't one of the first fifth grade dreams you had to be the energy and power?
No. I just fell into it.
Okay. All right. One of the things I like to end with when I kind of talk to our guests is leadership and what that means to you. But I'm not going to ask you what type of leader you are, but through business and sports and life, can you talk to us what leadership means to you, right? Because one of the things that people often talked about, I mean, there are different type of leaders. I was a captain in high school. It just kind of happens in different ways. So when people talk about leadership, what do you think about?
I think it's how you conduct yourself. I really do. And it's, how hard do you work? How much do you care about other people around you? I like Matt Bayless is the strength and conditioning coach for Notre Dame. And I'll put it this way. I think it was really interesting. When I first met Matt, this is a couple years ago now, walked into the weight room. And what I mean by it's how you conduct yourself. I said, Matt, I looked at the wall. I said, you have three categories. One is satisfied. And most people are in the satisfied category. I said, just can you define what satisfied means? And he goes, you're at the University at Notre Dame, you're on scholarship, and you're playing football. And I said, okay. I said, then what's hungry? He goes, you want to be an All-American on and off the football field.
Okay.
And then there was only two people in the starving category. And I said, if that's hungry, what could starving be? And he goes, you want to be an All-American, you want to be in the classroom and on the football field, but you want to bring everybody else with you.
Wow.
That's leadership.
Wow. That's deep.
I think that's what leadership is.
Well, you're absolutely. I mean, and it's funny because you talk about something as kind of in whoever. If no one's been in a college weight room, some of them are insane. I mean, there are guys yelling, chalk flying everywhere. I mean, it's just an insane environment. But if you're able to kind of look at that and kind of witness it and talk about leadership in that way, I mean, these are kids who may be satisfied, got a scholarship in Notre Dame. They're doing well in the classroom. I mean, hungry and starving. That's great. I love the starving one. That's pretty good.
The starving one. And do you remember one time? I'll just say one more thing. Remember when Coach Holtz? I can't remember what happened, but he lined us up after practice and he was going to run us. Okay, and he just said, "I'm going to leave it to everybody else when they want to stop." Right? And there were about 20 or 30 of us. We wouldn't stop. And we kept going. And it wasn't just one guy trying to stand out. We were saying, everybody just keep going. We're never going to stop. We'll be here till morning. You know what I mean? And finally,
wow.
And finally, Coach had to just call it.
It didn't work. It didn't work.
He wore out before we did.
Well, it's funny. I wanted to save the best for last. And I say that because and this happened in 1988, we were playing Southern California, USC, and it was kind of I'm a sophomore. I'm not really kind of understanding what's going on, but two guys, Ricky Waters and Tony Brooks, were late for curfew and they got sent home. And that team meeting for me and I'll never forget that, man. We've had a chance to be on some very successful teams. And don't get me wrong, man, I love to win a national championship. But as far as like being around guys and your brothers, like I was so young, I never felt that, even in the pros or anywhere, because I knew that literally the only people I could depend on were the people in this room. So what I'm talking about is there was a team. So those guys were late the following day, and I think we were playing USC at night or something like that. So we have a full day, but we had a team meeting. And, guys are kind of whispering and talking, and two of our teammates aren't there. And Coach Holtz started the meeting, and he kind of went over some game plans. And then he said, I just want to let you know, two guys decided to be individuals. They came in late for curfew. We sent them home. And there was this long pause, and I remember him saying, seniors, this is your team. And he walked out. And I'm sitting there like, what the hell just happened? I mean, guys didn't, and seniors, they just started to stand up and start talking. And I'm getting chills again. I'm getting fun. I mean, it was just an amazing, amazing experience. Can you please tell me what you remember from that? And kind of, you were one of the byproducts of having success that day, because those guys left. So can you kind of walk us through kind of your experience in that day?
Well, I remember the things I remember about that is, we all knew, whenever, if you had a meeting at 7, you were there in your chair at 6:50, 6:55, or
Right.
else you were late. So, these guys, I think they even might have missed the entire meeting. And, and it was unfortunate for them. Probably the best life lesson that Ricky and Tony, ever.
Oh, I'm sure.
learned. And you talk to Ricky about it and Tony about it today. It was unfortunate at the time for them, but I think they're better men for it.
Right.
And I don't think they would disagree with that. But I do remember Coach saying that. I'll tell you one funny story too about it. But I do recall Wes getting up. Wes was all fired up. Wes Pritchett. He was one of our linebackers. Was very animated about what BS it was, lack of commitment. And then I personally remember Frank Stams. He was kind of the guy who threw down the final gauntlet on it. He got up and he said, you know what, this is the most important game of my career, of my life. He goes, everybody knows and has known the rules since the beginning. And he goes, I don't know what the rest of you guys are going to do, but I'm going to go out there and beat USC by myself. Go, F you all. And that was it. It was over. They were going home. And I can only tell you after game, and there's a guy who we all just love, Joe Moore, offensive line coach, one of the best coaches we had on the staff. He was just a funny guy. He was the only guy, for people that don't know, he was the only guy that ever smoked, I think, any of Coach Holtz's staff.
Never stopped.
Coach couldn't touch him. Okay. And hopefully if Coach Holtz ever watches this, he'd get a kick out of that. But I can remember after the game, Joe was like, boy, and he was talking to Andy and I, he goes, guys, I was nervous.
Oh my God.
The only other thing I'll tell you is that we're driving to the stadium. So I was the backup punt returner. I hadn't seen a punt return since August. Okay. And in pregame, Coach Holtz came around and I said, hey, Coach, I got you. Don't worry about punts. And he goes, I know you do. So that was it. But I'm not a guy to fair catch, Z. That's just not in my repertoire. And there was one time there was a real high punt, and it was not that deep. It was probably, 40 yards or something like that. I caught it in front of our bench, didn't wait for the fair catch, of course. Got crushed. Okay. Lou was so upset at me. He was going off. It was to this day, he and I laugh about it. I mean, again, if he had anybody else, he could have put in his punt returner at the time. He would have. So,
but and that's why I was excited about this interview, because I mean, there's so many great moments that you and I have shared.
Yeah.
And those moments are pivotal moments in kind of how I lead my life, right? I mean, talking about overcoming adversity, talking about being too small, too short, talking about being told no, making decisions that affect the rest of your life. And these are the stories that I think are important. And it just so happens to kind of be around our era where we're really successful and kicking ass. But it's interesting because the reason why we were so good, the reason why we played so well, wasn't that we had all the talent in the world. I mean, Holtz was moving people and moving positions and everything. It was the fact that we were brothers. We were, and it's kind of hard because everybody on every team, I mean, they think that they could do a lot with each other, and I believe that. But the most important moments that I think about leadership, that I think about being successful, happened not necessarily during a game, but like through the Notre Dame football program. And so as we're talking, I can kind of see where you get this undying support for Notre Dame. I mean, you've done some things way beyond the call of duty for the university that I don't think the current players understand, or maybe even guys from our generation understand, right? But there's a commitment, and there's something there that you wanted to prove to yourself. I think one of the great things you commented on was the fact that Holtz gave you a scholarship, and you kind of wanted to repay that. I mean, not very many people can say that. And so having a chance to kind of spend some time with you, not necessarily talking about touchdowns or stats or anything like that, but just kind of like,
I didn't have any.
You are. Pardon me?
I didn't have any stats. It was a good thing we didn't focus on that.
No, but it's really what kind of made us who we are, right? And you think about those times of in practice and Holtz telling you, hey, you can't do it, being able to prove something him or your coach from Yale. I mean, these are kind of life etching moments that have allowed you to become kind of who you are. But more importantly, this happened through athletics. And so being able to kind of share those experiences with you and kind of being around the same time in the same locker rooms in college and professionally is awesome. And so when you agreed to do this, I was pumped, man, because this is kind of one of those special interviews that mean a lot to me. So I'm glad you had a chance to spend some time with us.
No, of course, do anything for you, brother. I'm always here, and you've made my life richer, and I'm fully appreciative of that. Proud of Candy and what you guys are doing here. And I just, we'll hopefully be rallying sometime in January, see how the team does. But we were teammates for 4 years at college. One professionally, and but we're lifelong friends, and that's really special, Z. So I appreciate you, appreciate everything you're doing, and proud of you.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Pat Eilers. I'd like to thank everyone listening on Facebook and also on YouTube Live. Most of all, my wonderful wife, producer, woman extraordinaire, Candy Rose. This interview, along with our other interviews, will be on YouTube at Chris Zorich 50. We've had some great ones, so Pat's going to be right up there with one of those. Thank you guys very much. And there's not going to be a jinx on Saturday because this Notre Dame victory after beating number one team is gone. I mean, this is something that we have to do. So the fact that we're playing Boston College doesn't mean anybody. It could be Little Sisters of the Poor, It could be who's the team that Holtz commented on when we were at the
Rutgers.
Yes, yeah, ruptures. Better keep it ruptures. And then because then he got in trouble like the next week for saying it was Rutgers.
But you know what, Z? Given the history here, I wouldn't want to play anybody else but BC. Let's go.
Absolutely. Which kind of goes along, and I know what you're going to say about this is although Trevor Lawrence was playing, I guarantee you, like myself, you would have wanted him to play
100%.
because you want to compete against the best.
100%. That's what Notre Dame represents. And I'm religious, as you know. I believe that Mary's the mother of God, and she cares if you win or lose. Right?
Of course she does, right? Especially if you're at Notre Dame, right?
Right.
Brother, it was awesome, man. I'm going to go ahead and roll these credits. Thank you very much, Pat.
Great to be with you. Have a great evening.
You got it, brother.